guys, it's me, Allie. So I wanted to give you a little preview of what a day in the life of a hospice nurse is. I do not case manage, I just do visits, meaning I just visit patients on a case-by-case basis. Usually when I work weekends, it's more of a triage situation. I call it like the emergency department of hospice because you're just all over the place. So I'm going to give you a little preview of what my day is, let's say on a weekend, and how I start my day, how to prepare for your day as a hospice nurse. And then I'm going to do a follow-up video on just little tips and tricks, what to keep in your bag, your trunk kit, if your job doesn't provide you one, and little things to know just about hospice in general. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so the first thing that I do before I start my day is I get my car set up, and I get myself set up as well. I buy these are just doggy pads from Target, and I put them down on my seat and my passenger seat just to protect my own car from the germs that I may or may not bring in and out of the home. It's very hard in home care and hospice when you're going into people's homes to maintain a barrier for yourself because you're kind of brushing up against people's furniture sometimes and the beds and all things like that. I don't have a separate car for my job, so I have to find a way to protect it, right? So now I'm going to show you what my passenger seat, my ride or die, looks like during my work day. I'm going to have my laptop. These are my mileage logs. Now, most companies don't require this anymore. Everything is electronic, but I do this just because it gives me a glimpse of when I'm actually putting in my mileage as to what it's like, and kind of it helps me keep track of my mileage during the day. So I'm going to give you an example of how I use this later on in the video. Phone. If your work doesn't supply you one, do me a favor, never call a patient from your own private cell phone with the number showing. Always put it in as private because they will call you instead of calling the main number, which they should. I keep a pair of gloves and I keep a box of sandy wipes. And the reason for that is, as I sanitize everything in the home, I do like to sanitize it in the car as well. It's very hard in between patient care when you're charting back and forth to kind of always have to, what are you going to do? Wash your hands in between? No. So you're going to wipe your laptop down when you're there, but I also wipe it down in the car too. That's who I am. And I also do everything at the end of my day as well, so I can start fresh the next day and I know everything that I have is clean. So I wipe down my phone, my laptop, watch, my badge, things like that. So that's what my side piece looks like during the day. I know isn't it beautiful? So organized. Now that you have your car organized, and usually it's a lot more chaotic than this. I'm usually doing like 5 things at once. I'm syncing my computer while I'm getting my car ready so that when I have my patient list for the day, I can call everybody, get ready to go. So when I triage people's needs, usually I have a steno notebook, but because it has some information in it, I'm not going to use that right now for today's example. Well, I have my laptop open. We're going to pretend I have about 5 patients to start out with. Now, when you work weekends, you're going to have a lot more than, you might have anywhere from 4 to 8 patients, depending on their needs. Every visit might take just about an hour. You want to give yourself an hour for each patient. So what I do when I triage all my patients, I look at my list, I see what I'm going there for, and I take my wonderful 4-colored pen. Every nurse has to have one of these. I write patient initials. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write, like, say this is John Smith, and this is my first patient. So in red, I'm going to write fully draining the brown urine, or check for patency. / don't mind me, I'm writing with one hand, blood. And in blue, usually write down the address, like 1 Pocahontas Way. Isn't that bad? Pocahontas Way. And then I'll write the phone number down that I need to contact them at, and any special instructions like park on left side of the driveway. Props to those who usually who have to hold their phone and write at the same time. Little things I like to write. So I know you're all looking at my thumbs like, hey, she has those thumbs. Ooh, yep, I do. So Another thing that I like to write is this report. And then I'll write the case manager's name. So Susie Q. So, and the clinical manager as well. Barbara Bush. Barbara B. I send them an email at the end of my day because I could be seeing multiple patients for this team right here. And I'll send them an email at the end of my day with the result, any orders that I change, and anything that needs to be followed up with during on Monday that might be pertinent for them. And then, so this is kind of what my day starts out. And I'll do that for the next 5 patients. And I'll triage them that way. The first things I'm always going to triage is pain crisis, or respiratory crisis. So end of life, people who are actively dying, especially the ones whose family needs a lot of support or education. In a long-term care facility, a person who's actively dying might not be my first visit if I don't have any other of these. Okay? Because of the fact that they're in a 24-hour facility, they have physicians on call, and the nurses have orders, standing orders already. I find that in homes and assisted livings, people need a lot more education, and you need to monitor those patients better, because the nurses, especially in assisted livings, don't have a scope of practice to even administer morphines. It all depends on the assisted living. So I'll triage them this way. Things that might fall last, or maybe like a fentanyl patch change. Perfect, there, now you guys can see. So things that might fall on the bottom would be like a fentanyl patch change, got a skin tear, and the facility reports that it's not a big skin tear, but they have to report it, and that there's a dressing in place. I might just check in with them to see, hey, how is that dressing doing? Is it saturated? Do I need to come right away to change it? Even though this might not seem like an emergent situation, it all depends on the skin tear, and you want to get the nurse's assessment of it, because everybody sees things a little bit different anyway. So it might not sound it when you see this on your triage report, but it could end up being up here on the priority list somewhere. So like I said, pain crisis, respiratory crisis, end of life, actively dying, transitioning. Another thing that might fall on your list is going to be somebody who had medication changes, like they initiated morphine for end of life, and they want to follow up on how how effective it is on the patient, how many times we've been using it, if it's a PRN, how many times, and like, let's say the past 24 hours they've been using that morphine. It's a good way to kind of gauge if they need something scheduled, if we need to change the dose or the frequency, or even the medication in general, if morphine's the right medication for them. So that's how I'm going to triage my day. So once I do that, I usually try to label them 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. down my list, and then I go from there. So the next thing I do is I MapQuest all my patients and where they live, and I get kind of a gauge as to how long it takes me to get from where. So after I triage them, I'm going to put them in MapQuest the way I triage them. You can't always go, like during the week, they might go from, the closest to their house to the farthest away from their house, or vice versa. On the weekends, you can't really do that. You have to go with the patient needs. I know that probably happens a lot during the week too, but I know specifically on the weekends, we go who needs to be seen first. So you're going to want to put everybody in according to how you triage them, and go from there, and write down how long it takes you to get from John Smith's house to Barbara Bush's house, or whatever, and write that on here. So in maybe blue, you can write 34 minutes. Round it up. Always round up. Even though it's on the lower side, round up to 40 minutes, depending on where you live. I live in a state that's very busy, and 40 minutes can turn into an hour. Give yourself an hour for each patient. So let's say it takes me 40 minutes to get from John Smith's house to Barbara Bush's house, and I get at John Smith's house at 9 o'clock. Let's say I'm there till 10. I might not be, but I could be there till 10. I'm going to give Barbara Bush an ETA of probably 10:45, 10:45 to 11:15. So some people do it half an hour, some people do an hour. in between. I like to give a half an hour because I think an hour is such a wide range. These people have lives, things like that. I call my assisted living patients because they might have private caregivers or family staying with them, or some of them are just still alert and oriented. So I'm going to give them that courtesy of knowing, hey, there's a nurse coming to see you. Don't worry, I'm going to be here around this time. And that's why I keep my list like this, because if something comes up, an emergency comes up with another patient during my day, then I can quickly call them as a reference, write a clinical note that I called them to change the time and let them know. Also, triage is very helpful on the weekends, at least for where I work, and they'll help you call patients as well if you get diverted to another crisis or another patient. Okay, next is how I use this. Now, my company, we have an app on our mobile device called Sure Mobile. All you have to do is open the device. It looks like this. I'm not going to show you anything else because there's information in there, but all of the addresses are put in. You can even put in addresses yourself in case something doesn't show up, or you start from a different place than you normally do. I'm going to start from home today. Let's say I start at 0800 and I left the house at 8:30 after I called everybody, uploaded all my patients. So I put the travel time in 08:30. First one I'm going to put John Smith, Pocahontas Way. Pocahontas. Dang it. 1 Pocahontas Way. So his initials go at this one. He's my first patient, Pocahontas Way. And this way you can also keep track of, you can write things like dropped off sample. I have a piece of glitter on my face. Went home or got diverted to another patient. If you had to turn around somewhere, you should still be getting paid that mileage, because say you're halfway to a patient, you get flipped around somewhere and you're going 30 minutes in the opposite direction, you're going to want to make sure that you know. And it's okay to pull over on the side of the road in a safe spot just to get your bearings, and so you just feel like you're a little more organized. Then let's say I got to John Smith's for 9 o'clock. So this is where the time goes. Ready? 0800 to 9 o'clock. And then the first thing that I do when I show up to my patient's house is in the car, I'm going to put in my travel time, my daily log, just so it shows on the computer. And then I'll get into the patient. I'll put the time start for the patient, get into the patient when I start my visit. You can put your visit time on here. I use it just more so specifically for keeping track of the drive times, because like I said, in a place where I live, it can go from, you can't always go by what MapQuest says, because it can be a half an hour to get somewhere, and then if you leave like 10 minutes after you're supposed to, it's gonna be an hour. Hey, what else do I have real? I get usually 4 to 8 patients a day on the weekends. Sometimes I've done 10. Usually do about 12-hour shifts. They can go a little bit longer. So what I do is after every patient, I open up a draft email on here. And you guys your company might have a different way of letting you communicate with case managers and things like that. This is the way that we do. We have encrypted email, so we can do stuff like that. I open up an email with the case manager and the clinical manager, and I'll start writing my report for the patient. At the end of the day, I'm not like going through my entire notebook and everything like that. So that's when I'm gonna here it is. That's when I'm going to click off report here. I'm going to check off report. That way I know I gave it to the clinical manager and the case manager, and that way they can follow up. Things that I'll include that report are obviously what the reason I went to see the patient for, any orders change. What I want to keep in mind in hospice is that we use a lot of medications with names that kind of scare people, like morphine, Ativan, Haldol. Some patients might be afraid of getting addicted to it. The families might be afraid of initiating those types of medications. There might be some people that think out there that hospice is nothing but just starting those medications, which is not true. We don't normally initiate those medications until end of life unless they need it for some other reason before that, for pain management or respiratory management. We don't just start patients off the bat on a comfort kit. Everybody has a comfort kit in their home just in case. They need it, but we just don't start patients off on that. These are some little tidbits to take away. If your patient's on something like morphine, think about urinary retention, right? If they're at the end of life and you're going in for a visit and patient's on morphine 10 milligrams, We usually use the liquid, obviously. So let's say they're on morphine 10 milligrams, which would be 0.5 mLs if you're doing a 20 mgs per ml. So if they're doing that every 2 hours, and you know, this person does not have a history of opioid use, then they're still kind of squirmy. Could it be pain? Yeah, you have to look at the whole picture. But things to ask first are, when was the last void and how much? Because your urinary tract will still be producing urine at the end of life. So think about that. Is your patient having urinary retention because of the medications that they're using to control their symptoms at end of life? And if so, it might be indicated to ask the physician to straight cath the patient just to relieve some of that pressure. Because imagine feeling like you have to pee and you can't. I straight cathed a patient one time at end of life, and I got about over 1,000 mLs of urine. Yeah, and this was no PO intake for about like 48 hours. So you would think, oh, she probably wouldn't have to pee. She's probably dehydrated. But no, at end of life, your body goes into reserve mode anyway. But that urine production still stays there. The second thing, always bring chucks into your patient home. I know in Massachusetts where I live, we are required to have a barrier between our laptop and our bag when we go into patients' homes. I try not to sit down as much as possible. I know in a lot of homes it may be rude, but you might be able to squeeze your butt on your chucks depending how big the chucks is. I wasn't gonna say the other one, depending on how big the chucks is. So always bring one into the patient home. It's gonna provide a great barrier for your stuff and a great barrier for the patient as well. So you're not bringing germs into like every other place that you go. Third thing, you are going to have to double bag all of your wound care. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks in my next video on how to manage that, and just kind of what my work bag looks like in general. Because I am a visit nurse, I try not to carry as much in and out as possible, because then you have to get into the whole thing of keep your clean stuff on this side, dirty stuff on this side, blah, 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 blah. So the less you keep in your bag, the better. The more you keep in your trunk, I mean, you might not have room for that Target run, but you're going to be a lot happier during the day if you don't keep as much in your bag, because you're also not hauling as much on your shoulders. The fourth thing to think about, don't wear your stethoscope in and out of homes, in and out of facilities. I know it looks cool. It really does. And I have it in some of my videos where I have it around my neck, but usually I don't wear it around my neck. It's usually in my bag or on my belt clip. So something that I do during the day as well, the fifth thing, is to protect your own personal items while you're in the home. So that means I don't wear rings when I'm in the home. I keep them around my name badge. These aren't like super fancy rings. They're kind of easy to replace. If you have an engagement ring, you just might want to leave it in the car, period. Because those hold a lot of bacteria. And I also keep my keys and my phone in a plastic bag similar to this one, because I am in and out of my car. My car is a push to start, so I don't have to worry about needing the key for the ignition. That's one less thing that I have to touch during my day, and one less thing that I have to clean at the end of the day as well, if it has that plastic barrier over it. I don't use my cell phone when I'm in the visit, my personal one, and during the day, I might check it every once in a while if I have time, but usually I'll only check it if it goes off, because the day gets fairly busy. Sixth thing that I'm going to recommend is get a cooler. A good size cooler you can keep in your trunk. Mine's hard plastic and it's a rolling cooler. So I keep enough water in there for the day, and snacks, and also I use Uncrustable peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And you're like, why don't you just make your own? Well, they're quick, they just toss in. I don't like to spend a whole heck of a lot of my own day just getting ready for work the next day. Seventh thing I recommend is, company is going to tell you to do this as well. They'll supply you with paper towels. So bring those into your patient home so you can wash your hands. Usually they'll give you a little bottle of soap too. While it's nice to use a patient's soap and their paper towels, you just never know. You want to act like you're in a facility. So if a patient was handing you soap to use, if you were in a hospital, you'd be like, oh no, I'm going to use the one in the bathroom to wash my hands, right? So bring your own stuff. Act like you're in a facility so you can keep your patients who in hospice are mostly immunocompromised nearing end of life. You don't want to bring anything into the homes that you don't have to. I hope this kind of gave you a little bit of insight into what the day is like. I know it's kind of short because you don't get to go in and out of the patient homes with me. It's a lot like home care. We do wound care, Foley care, things like that. Our It's just our goal is a little bit different than home care. That's not to say that we won't treat. We will treat. We'll absolutely treat as long as the patient's okay with it, and you know, it makes them feel better. We'll definitely do that. But we do a whole smorgasbord of stuff in hospice. You don't just come in at the last week of their life and kind of swoop in and start meds and then we're out. Usually it's a lot longer than that. Our patients have a 6-month or less prognosis, so we can be there for 6 months or even more. You know, I hope it gives you a little bit of an insight into what we do on our daily basis, and that you just have to have a big heart to do it, and you'll be great. So I hope you liked it and enjoyed. Feel free to subscribe and like the video, and look out for my next one that's going to be based on I keep in my bag when I go into patient homes and little tips and tricks I'll show you. Have a good one. Bye.